In this video, we're going to be going over 5 tips with a deck saw. Right after this. All right, so the first tip is to notch around a column kind of like this, right? If you want to notch around a column, I use relief cuts with a deck saw and just bend the remainder and let the end cappers finish the product, if that makes sense. I'll show you right after this.
All right, field notching 101. So, as you can see here, my mate made 3 cuts there. Because if you don't, it's a pain in the ass to get that rib to cut.
I should have did 4.
So he should have done another 4th cut right here. Then those just fold up. Now, instead of sawing all the way through your deck and making it look like shit, you just got those little fold backs. And then you slide it right on in, and then the end cappers can live their dream.
Yeah.
Done deal.
It's kind of hard to see. I'm in a super tight spot. It sucks, but you get the picture. You don't want to super notch it, so then there's a huge patch order to fix it all and stuff. You want to make your cuts nice and tight, but that'll get you by. As those little flappers are like flipped up in the air, you can just bend those down. As long as they're not in the pour, you're good. Or you can, the patch gang can use them as patches or flip them different ways and manipulate it. But that is tip number 1. Now tip number 2, how to start the damn saw. Okay, a lot of people mess this up. Main thing is to hold the saw with one hand and then the pull handle with the other hand. So as you drop the saw with one hand, you can pull it back. So it's like a push-pull motion. I'll show you right here.
So this saw is already warm. Sometimes you gotta prime it and choke it, but this saw is pretty much warm. I'll just barely like half choke it back here. But that's not really what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is hold this saw with one hand and then grab the rope, the pull handle with the other hand. So you push it down and then you pull back at the same time, just like this. It's really simple, but yeah, you see people all the time like stepping on the saw and putting it all the way down on the ground and then just pulling back. That is like twice as hard as just holding it with one hand and then pulling it back. It's a push, pull. Extremely simple. Once you get it, you'll be a rock star. And it looks way cooler. That's tip number 2. Now let's do 3.
So tip number 3 is how to change the saw blade. Okay, I see even journeymen kind of mess this up. The main thing, excuse me, the main thing is you hold the blade with one hand and then you hold the wrench with the other hand and you move the blade. You don't move the wrench hand. It's kind of complicated, but once you get it, it's super simple. Super simple. So let me show you and then I'll talk some more. So once you get it cracked, just loosen the rest by hand. Same way for tightening. So tighten it by hand, tighten this nut by hand. Once it's snug tight, put your wrench on it, and then just move the blade. Boom, tight, easy peasy. A lot of people mess that up. As soon as you start doing it this way, you'll never go back. That was tip number 3. Now let's do tip number 4. So tip number 4 is how to do like a diagonal rip or just a cut. Okay, a lot of people mess this up also. But say right here, this sheet right here. Say we wanted to diagonally cut it from here across there, right there, from there, from here all the way following this green line. What I would do is I would just cut the highs first with the saw. So I would just run the saw pretty easy, just from here, cut the high. I wouldn't even worry about the low, just cut the high, skip the low, cut the high, skip the low, cut the high, skip the low, and finish with this last high. And then once I have the highs cut, I would use that as its own little, its own line or groove, like a keyway. And then I would go from keyway to keyway, keyway to keyway. It's kind of hard to see because I'm in a super tight spot, but you get the picture. Bada bing, bada boom. Tip number 5 is the sweet spot in a saw, okay? So when you're doing a full sheet rip, you don't want the saw way buried deep and you don't want to just barely nick the top of it so every like foot it's coming up on you, okay? There's a sweet spot right in the middle where you can just keep the saw doing work the whole entire time and it'll cut at its fastest, most optimal spot. Every saw is a little different. All the power bands are a little different. The steels are lighter and wind up higher, and Hiltis suck and Huskies are okay or whatever. But every saw is a little different. But once you get that sweet spot, you'll know you're in the sweet spot. So keep fishing for it in a rip. Don't just keep fighting it and letting the saw come all the way up and go back down and go all the way up and go back down. Find that sweet spot and you'll be able to do it. Stay in that sweet spot the whole entire rip. And it'll be way easier. Won't be all tired at the end of the day. But that was 5 tips for a deck saw. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a like down below. And if you have any other questions, comment down below. Thanks for watching. As always, work safe. Yeehaw.